You're listening to the Opportunity Intelligence Journal, where we examine what happens beneath the surface of commercial real estate deals, the numbers, the documents, assumptions, the risks, and ultimately the decisions that determine whether an opportunity moves forward or falls apart. I'm Maxine Ebegbuzie, managing partner of M.E. Crestwell Capital and the creator of Crestwell IQ. Now, in every episode, we take one real capital question and work through it with the depth it deserves.
So I want you to picture this scenario. You're sitting at your desk, right? And a commercial real estate opportunity just lands right in your lap.
Oh, the dream scenario.
Exactly. And by all traditional metrics, it is absolutely pristine. Like, let's say it's a stabilized multifamily asset in this booming secondary market.
Yeah, everybody wants those right now.
Right. The location is prime. The physical asset just looks incredible on paper. And the numbers, I mean, they aren't just making sense. They're basically simming to you.
The spreadsheet is beautiful.
It's gorgeous. The requested loan amount against the purchase price gives you this highly conservative loan-to-value ratio. And the borrower is sitting across from you, just casually mentioning these deep pockets of equity they're bringing to the table.
Right, checking all the boxes.
Every single one. You're looking at this file, you're doing the napkin math, and you're thinking, well, this is it. This is a layup. I mean, literally any bank in the country would kill to deploy capital into this asset.
They'd fight over it.
Exactly. So you package it up, you send it off to a top-tier lender, you tell your borrower, hey, we should have a term sheet by Friday. Easy.
Tell them.
And then 3 weeks later, nothing. The lender completely ghosts you. I mean, absolute deafening silence.
The worst feeling in the world.
It really is. Your emails go unreturned. Your voicemails are ignored. Or maybe instead of silence, a completely different lender suddenly emerges from the woodwork, right? And they're demanding this mountain of hyper-specific documents that literally nobody even mentioned at the beginning of the process.
Shifting the goalposts.
Exactly. Or maybe a third lender reviews the file, sits on it for a month, and just curtly emails back, this transaction does not fit our current credit box.
Just a generic brush off.
Yeah, totally generic. And the deal just completely falls apart. The borrower is furious. Obviously, they take their business elsewhere. The broker is screaming that the lender just wasted everyone's time. And you are left staring at your screen, wondering, what on earth just happened to a sure thing?
It's the classic post-mortem of a dead commercial deal. I mean, we see it all the time.
You really do.
And the terrifying part is that this exact scenario, it plays out every single day in the capital markets. Every day.
Wow.
And when the dust settles, human nature kicks in, right? People start searching for a scapegoat.
Oh, for sure. It's always someone else's fault.
Always. They assume the underwriter was incompetent, or maybe the loan officer was just, trying to hit some arbitrary quota, or that the funding source was entirely mythical to begin with.
Right, like they didn't even have the money.
Exactly. But the reality, and this is usually much more uncomfortable for the borrower to swallow, the deal didn't fare on the property.
Okay.
The property was probably a fantastic piece of real estate. The deal failed on the file.
The deal failed on the file.
Right.
That is, wow. And that uncomfortable reality is exactly what we're getting into today.
It's a massive topic.
It really is. But before we step into this absolute minefield of commercial real estate finance, we need to let you know that this deep dive is brought to you by M.E. Crestwell Capital and produced by Maxine Ebegbuzie.
Yes, absolutely.
We are going to be talking a lot today about why good deals die in the dark. So if you have a commercial real estate deal right now that you are trying to get funded, or, if you've ever watched a surefire slam dunk deal just die silently on the vine, you still don't know why, you need to call M.E. Crestwell Capital for a consultation.
You really do, yeah.
Our mission today is to unpack their proprietary methodology, which they call opportunity intelligence. We're going to tear down the traditional loan process and show you exactly how to transform raw, messy, disorganized property data into a genuinely lender-ready decision.
And doing that, it really requires a complete paradigm shift.
How so?
Because if we want to understand why these seemingly perfect deals die silently on a bank server somewhere, we have to fundamentally change how we view a loan application in the first place.
Okay, so where do people get it wrong?
Well, this is where the initial friction occurs, right? Most borrowers, and frankly a lot of brokers too, they treat a loan submission like a statement of fact.
Like, here is my building.
Exactly. They view it as a brochure for a great building. Look how pretty it is. Look at these numbers. But it is not a brochure.
Right.
A loan application is actually a highly complex, legal and financial claim.
Okay, let me stop you there because that feels counterintuitive to me.
Sure.
If I am buying a physical brick and mortar building, right, and it has actual tenants paying actual rent every month, that isn't a claim. That's a reality. Like, the building exists, the money exists.
I hear that all the time.
Right. So are you saying that just because a deal exists in the physical world, it doesn't automatically translate to something a bank can digest?
That is precisely the disconnect.
Precisely.
A real-world opportunity and a financeable transaction.
Yeah.
They're related concepts, definitely.
Yeah.
But they are absolutely not the same thing.
Okay, I see.
And the distance between those two concepts, that distance is exactly where deals get delayed. It's where the risk gets repriced by the bank, or where the entire transaction is just, quietly abandoned.
So walk me through that. What do you mean by claims?
Think about the mechanics of a financing request. When you hand a package to a lender, it is literally nothing but a collection of massive, unverified claims.
Unverified being the key word there.
Yes, you are claiming the property is worth $8 million. You are claiming the net operating income is stable.
Right. You're claiming the sponsor has $1 million in liquid cash.
Exactly. You're claiming that the planned renovations are going to stay under budget, that the anchor tenants won't just break their leases next year, and that the exit strategy at the end of the 5-year term is, based on realistic market capitalization rates.
And from the borrower's perspective, they might be looking at you saying, but I'm telling the truth. Like, everything in this package is 100% accurate.
And they very well might be telling the absolute truth. I'm not saying they're lying. But lenders are not in the business of underwriting confidence.
Right.
They do not underwrite a borrower's earnestness or good intentions. They underwrite hard evidence.
Show me the receipts.
Exactly. So when a borrower says, hey, this building generates $900,000 a year in top-line revenue, the underwriter doesn't just nod, smile, and plug that number into their Excel model.
Right. They don't just take your word for it.
No, their immediate involuntary response is, according to what?
According to what? I like that.
Is that $900,000 according to a pro forma that you just made up in your head? Is it according to a rent roll provided by a seller who is, quite frankly, highly incentivized to lie to you?
Oh, yeah. They want to sell the building.
Exactly. Or is it according to actual bank deposits, certified tax returns, property management software exports?
Yeah.
That's what they want to know.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's really akin to a defense attorney presenting a case in a courtroom.
That's a great way to look at it.
Because you can't just stand in front of the jury, point at your client and declare, my client is innocent. Trust me, he's a fantastic guy who pays his bills.
The judge would laugh you out of the room.
Right. The jury doesn't care about your confidence. You have to walk them through the evidence. You have to show them the timestamps on the security footage. You have to produce the receipts. You have to put the character witnesses on the stand.
You have to build the case.
Exactly. You have to mathematically prove the narrative you are trying to sell them. But, okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
Because I know what you, the listener, might be wondering right now. Gathering all that ironclad evidence, that takes weeks, sometimes months.
It is a lot of work.
So can a borrower just send the preliminary documents they currently have on hand, the basic financials, and just tell the lender, hey, here's the broad stroke of the deal. Take a look and just let us know what else you need to get this across the finish line?
Oh, man. I cannot stress this enough. That is perhaps the single most fatal mistake a borrower or a broker can make in today's capital markets.
Really? Just saying, let us know what you need.
It is an absolute deal killer. And the reason is structural. When you take that approach, you are taking the enormous burden of organizing and proving the transaction, and you are taking it off your plate and transferring it entirely onto the lender's shoulders.
You're making it their problem.
Exactly. You are essentially asking a highly paid financial underwriter to act as your personal administrative assistant.
But wait, isn't that their job? Aren't they being paid by the bank to underwrite the file?
They are paid to evaluate risk, yes. They are not paid to organize your messy paperwork. You really have to picture what an underwriter's desk actually looks like on a Tuesday morning.
Okay, paint that picture.
They're not sitting there leisurely reviewing your one specific deal, sipping coffee. They are managing a pipeline of multiple, highly complex, multi-million-dollar opportunities simultaneously.
Right. They have a dozen deals in front of them.
Exactly. And their time is their absolute most constrained asset. So what happens when they open a disorganized file? Every single time they encounter an unclear figure, it halts their
And
momentum.
breaks their flow.
Yes. Every missing document represents a brand new email thread they have to initiate. Let's say, for example, your rent roll says the gross potential rent is $1 million. But the trailing 12-month operating statement, the actual financials, says you only collected $800,000.
That's a big discrepancy.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And that contradiction forces the underwriter to physically stop their financial modeling, pick up the phone, and try to figure out which version of reality is actually reliable.
And I imagine if they have to do that, 3 or 4 times on a single file, the friction just becomes too much.
The friction becomes completely fatal because the file begins to consume significantly more time than the potential profit of the loan appears to justify for the bank.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's an ROI calculation on their own time.
Exactly. And this is where borrowers get incredibly confused because the rejection process, it's almost never loud or confrontational.
Right. They don't call you up screaming.
Nobody at the bank sends you a dramatic email with a big red stamp that says declined. What happens is much more insidious.
What happens?
The file simply moves lower in the queue.
Oh, wow.
The analyst decides to work on a different deal, one that is fully baked, organized, and easy to model while they wait for your answers. And then the responses from the loan officer take a little longer. The credit committee becomes just a little less willing to stretch on the amortization or the interest rate.
And meanwhile, the borrower is sitting at home starting to feel like the lender is ghosting them.
Right. They're refreshing their email, wondering what went wrong.
This is a massive realization because we always assume silence means they are just busy, right? Or they're working hard on the approval behind the scenes. But you're saying silence from a lender is actually a very specific type of communication?
It is loud, flashing, neon sign information. Silence means your file was messy. It means the underwriter found a fundamental hole in your narrative. Or they simply got exhausted by the process of begging you for pieces of the puzzle that, frankly, should have been meticulously organized in the box from day one.
Which is exactly the problem that Amy Crestwell Capital was built to solve. I mean, they prevent this catastrophic silence by doing the heavy lifting before the lender ever even evaluates the loan.
They do the underwriting before the underwriter?
Exactly. They don't just pass along your messy file, they architect the evidence. So if you are sitting there right now listening to this and you're staring at your inbox, refreshing it over and over, facing that lender's silence on a deal you know in your bones is a good asset, you need to stop waiting and call Amy Crestwell Capital for a consultation.
Absolutely.
You just cannot afford to let a prime piece of real estate die because you handed a tired underwriter a messy box of puzzle pieces.
And if we pull back a bit and connect this to the broader mechanics of lending, since we've established that the burden of proof rests entirely on the borrower, we need to examine where these files actually break down.
Right, where are the weak points?
Because deals don't just spontaneously combust. There is a very predictable anatomy to the failure here. Based on the analysis of thousands of deals, there are 4 specific fracture points where a lender's confidence is consistently and systematically lost.
The 4 fatal fracture points. Okay, let's dig deep into these because I want you, the listener, to be able to audit your own deals against this exact framework. What exactly is fracture point number 1?
So the first fracture point is the file itself. And the nuance here is critical to understand. A file can contain every single required document like no missing PDFs, no forgotten attachments, and still completely lack structural integrity.
Okay, wait, how is that possible?
It is not merely about checking boxes on a list.
Give me a tangible example of that. What does a lack of structural integrity look like when the documents are technically, physically all there?
Okay, let's look at a standard multifamily acquisition. The borrower sends over a package that looks entirely complete on the surface.
Got the checklist done.
Yep. It has the executed purchase and sale agreement. It has the current rent roll, the trailing 12-month financials, a contractor's estimate for renovations, and a really nice executive summary outlining the loan request.
Sounds like a perfect submission.
It sounds great, but then the analyst actually opens the PDFs and starts cross-referencing the data across those documents.
Here we go.
The executed purchase agreement states the property price is $8.2 million. But the introductory email from the broker casually mentions a purchase price of $8 million even.
Oh, boy.
Then the formal loan application asked for a loan amount based on a $6.8 million valuation. And finally, the sources and uses schedule, the spreadsheet showing exactly where the money is coming from and going. That says that $7.1 million is required to close the transaction.
Oh, that is a total nightmare. So literally within the first 10 minutes of reviewing the file, the underwriter is staring at 4 completely different versions of financial reality.
Exactly. And just think about the cascade of questions this triggers in that underwriter's mind.
Right. They have no idea what's true.
Which purchase price is actually legally binding? Does the requested loan amount include the closing costs, or is it strictly for the real estate? Are the interest reserves baked into that $7.1 million figure? How much liquid cash is the borrower actually bringing to the closing table?
You can't answer any of it.
No. The package had all the required documents, sure, but it failed to answer the single most fundamental question of the transaction. What is the actual math?
Yeah.
There is a massive structural difference between a missing document and a missing fact.
That is a phenomenal distinction right there. A missing document versus a missing fact.
The missing document is just an administrative error.
Yeah.
You forgot to attach the PDF, right? You just download it and email
Yeah.
it over. No big deal.
It takes 2 seconds.
What a missing fact, however, is a foundational flaw. It means that nobody, not the borrower, not the broker, has actually sat down and completed the rigorous analysis required to make the deal mathematically coherent.
You just threw it in a folder and sent it.
Yeah, and when a bank sees a missing fact like that, they immediately assume you don't know what you were doing.
So that's fracture point 1, the disintegration of the file. Now, if we assume the file is perfectly organized and the math actually ties out perfectly, what is fracture point number 2?
Fracture point number 2 is the sponsor.
The borrower themselves.
Yes. Borrowers frequently develop this intense tunnel vision when it comes to the real estate itself. They get so hyper-focused on the physical brick and mortar, the prime location, the upside potential of the rents, that they completely forget who is actually driving the vehicle.
But let me push back on that a bit, because in commercial real estate, the loan is secured by the asset, right? It's a mortgage.
It is.
If I bring a lender a gorgeous, fully leased Class A office building in a prime zip code, doesn't the sheer quality of the collateral speak for itself? Like, if I default, the bank just gets a great building. They win anyway.
I hear this argument all the time, and it misses the mark. The collateral is incredibly important, yes, but collateral is entirely passive.
Passive, okay.
A beautiful brick building doesn't manage a complicated over-budget renovation. Collateral doesn't sit down at a conference table and aggressively negotiate lease renewals with a major anchor tenant who is threatening to leave.
That's a good point.
Collateral does not magically generate the cash to cover an operating shortfall when a major pipe bursts in the middle of winter. And it certainly doesn't project manage a complex construction draw process.
Right. Buildings don't run themselves.
Exactly. Lenders heavily scrutinize the sponsor because they need to know who is going to execute the business plan when the pristine theoretical spreadsheet inevitably collides with the messy, unpredictable reality of real estate operations.
So what exactly are they interrogating when they look at the sponsor? I imagine it's a lot more rigorous than just, pulling a credit score and seeing if they are a good person.
Oh, it is intensely rigorous. They are evaluating 4 distinct, interconnected pillars of the sponsor's financial profile.
Oh.
Experience, liquidity, net worth, and credit. And the trap that so many borrowers fall into is trying to collapse all 4 of those pillars into one vague statement like, oh, don't worry, the borrower is very strong.
Right. He's a good guy. He's got money.
Exactly. An underwriter will look at that and say, strong in what specific capacity? Because a sponsor might have a flawless 800 credit score, but absolutely zero liquid cash to cover a rainy day.
Which means they can't fix the roof.
Right. Conversely, you might have a sponsor with a massive $20 million net worth. But if $19 million of that is tied up in highly illiquid startup equity or heavily leveraged real estate, that net worth is useless if the boiler explodes tomorrow.
You can't pay a plumber with startup equity.
Exactly. Or maybe they have $5 million in cold, hard cash sitting in a checking account, but they've never operated a commercial asset in their entire life. They made all their money in tech.
Oh, I see that a lot.
Right. Or maybe they have 20 years of deep real estate experience, but they're currently drowning in existing variable rate debt across their current portfolio.
Mm-hmm. So it's about the combination of all 4.
Yes. If those 4 pillars do not perfectly align with the specific operational risks of the property being acquired, the deal fractures.
Yeah.
Right then and there.
That brings a whole new meaning to knowing your borrower. So we have the file and we have the sponsor. If both of those are rock solid, what is fracture point number 3?
Fracture point 3 is property economics. And this is the arena where marketing headlines severely deceive amateur investors.
Okay, how so?
Well, you will frequently see a broker's offering memorandum with this massive, bold teaser that says, property is fully occupied.
Which sounds great.
It sounds amazing, but to a seasoned underwriter, that headline means absolutely nothing without forensic context.
Right, because fully occupied just means there are warm bodies physically occupying the space. It doesn't mean those bodies are actually writing checks that clear the bank every month.
Exactly. The critical distinction here is physical occupancy versus economic occupancy.
Economic occupancy.
Yes. A building can proudly boast 95% physical occupancy on the rent roll. But if you dive into the collections history, they might only be economically yielding 70% of their gross potential rent.
Wow, that's a huge drop.
And that's when the underwriter starts asking the really painful questions. Are there massive, undisclosed concessions being given just to get bodies in the door?
Like offering 3 months of free rent on a 12-month lease just to make the building look full.
Exactly. Are the actual monthly cash collections matching the scheduled rents written on the leases? Or is there a mountain of bad debt and delinquency that the seller is desperately trying to hide?
So we aren't just talking about empty units here. We are talking about the silent bleed of bad debt, hidden concessions, and loss to lease that sellers deliberately try to bury in the pro forma.
They bury it deep.
It's like boasting that your new restaurant is fully booked every single night, right? But omitting the fact that half the tables have a coupon for a completely free meal, and the other half are sneaking out the back door without paying their check. You have a ton of foot traffic, but you aren't making a dime of actual profit.
That is a phenomenal analogy, truly. Stating the net operating income, or NOI, without a surgical understanding of the underlying expenses and collections is wildly misleading.
It's basically fiction.
It is. Similarly, pitching a projected after-repair value on a flip without a highly defensible scope of work and a rigorous comparable sales analysis is just writing fiction. The fundamental economics of the property have to be utterly bulletproof under aggressive scrutiny.
Which brings us to the fourth and final fatal fracture point. If the file is clean, the sponsor is liquid and experienced, and the property economics are bulletproof. How in the world does the deal still die?
It dies on the capital path.
It's capital path.
This is the literal route the file takes between the borrower's desk and the ultimate source of the money. And this is where so many fundamentally brilliant deals die an incredibly ugly, unnecessary death.
How?
Because a deal can be 100% legitimate, meticulously organized, backed by a wealthy sponsor, highly profitable, and it still gets rejected because it gets sent to the completely wrong type of lender.
Walk me through how that actually happens in practice, because to a lot of people, myself included sometimes, a lender is just a lender. A bank is a bank. They all have vaults full of cash they want to deploy, right?
That is a very common and, frankly, very dangerous misconception. Capital is highly segregated by risk appetite.
Okay, segregated how?
A stabilized, fully leased multifamily acquisition in a primary market requires an entirely different underwriting capability and a very different cost of capital than a ground-up boutique hotel development in a seasonal tourist town.
Right, completely different risk profiles.
Exactly. A local community bank might absolutely love the sponsor, but they might have a strict internal credit policy against lending on hospitality assets right now.
So they just can't do it no matter how much they like you.
Right. Or a private debt fund might happily accept the high-wire complexity of a heavy value-add repositioning. But because they are taking on so much risk, they will price their interest rate and origination fees so high that the property economics no longer pencil out for the borrower.
And this is where borrowers get trapped in what I like to call the broker daisy chain.
The broker chain is incredibly toxic to a deal's credibility.
Explain how that works for the listener.
What happens is, a borrower thinks they're dealing directly with a primary lender. But in reality, they handed their sensitive financial file to a local referral source.
A guy who knows a guy.
Exactly. That referral source didn't have the right contact, so they sent it to a regional broker. That broker sent it to a national correspondent who is now blast emailing a generic summary of the deal to 50 different lenders, hoping something, anything, sticks.
It's a massive financial game of telephone.
It really is.
The core narrative of the deal gets completely distorted with every pass.
Exactly. The requested loan amount suddenly morphs because someone altered the spreadsheet to make it look better. The strategic narrative shifts. Multiple layers of hidden broker fees start accumulating on top of the capital stack, weighing down the return.
So everyone wants their cut.
Yeah. Suddenly, there are 3 different conflicting versions of your transaction floating around the capital markets. And here is the secret borrowers just don't realize. Lenders talk to each other.
It's a small world.
Capital markets are very small. When a lender sees the exact same file bounce across their desk from 3 different brokers in 2 weeks, they instantly conclude the deal has been overshopped.
And what does that mean to them?
They assume it's a damaged asset that everyone else has already passed on. And your credibility as a sponsor is instantly vaporized.
That is a terrifying thought. You can ruin a perfect asset just by letting the wrong people email it around.
It happens all the time.
What this means for you, the listener, is that you simply cannot afford to leave your capital path to chance. You need a highly targeted, surgically direct, and completely transparent approach to the capital markets. And that is exactly why you need to book a consultation with M.E. Crestwell Capital.
They fix this exact problem.
Right. They don't just blast your file into the ether hoping someone bites. They meticulously scrutinize every single one of these 4 fracture points: the file, the sponsor, the economics, and the capital path, long before your deal ever hits a lender's desk. They ensure your path to capital is direct and your financial story is perfectly aligned.
Alignment is the central operating philosophy here. It has to be.
Everything has to match.
Yes. The physical property, the in-place income, the borrower's track record, the supporting documents, and the proposed debt structure must all sing in perfect harmony. They must tell the exact same story. If one single instrument is out of tune, the entire symphony falls apart and the underwriter just hits the mute button.
Okay, so we've established that the burden of proof is entirely on the borrower, and we understand the existential threat of these 4 fracture points. That naturally leads us to the physical evidence itself, right? The documents.
The fun part.
Because I think a lot of people view gathering documents as just annoying clerical work, like checking boxes on a PDF just to appease some bureaucrat at a bank. But it's so much deeper than that, isn't it?
Treating document collection like a clerical checklist is a fundamental misunderstanding of finance.
Okay, so what are they?
Documents are not paperwork. Documents are underwriting anxieties manifested in physical form.
Underwriting anxieties in physical form. Man, that is such a vivid way to look at it.
It changes how you see the process, right?
Totally. So when a bank underwriter sends you a list of required documents, they aren't just assigning you homework. They are literally handing you a list of their deepest fears about giving you millions of dollars, and they are asking you to soothe those fears with proof.
Precisely. When a lender demands a current rent roll, they aren't just asking for a static list of names to put in a file cabinet somewhere.
Right.
The specific anxiety they are trying to soothe is, who exactly occupies this property right now? What are they actually paying versus what the lease says? When did these leases expire, and how concentrated is my risk if the largest tenant suddenly goes bankrupt?
I'm terrified of the unknowns.
Yes. When they demand a trailing 12-month operating statement, the T12, they are anxious about the future. They are asking, regardless of what your highly optimistic pro forma promises this building will make next year, what did it actually earn, and what did it actually cost to operate in the harsh reality of the last 365 days?
Okay, so let's break down these anxieties a bit more. There is what we might call a universal core of documents, right? The baseline foundational stuff that every single commercial deal needs to even get in the door.
Yes, the universal core is non-negotiable. Every single commercial transaction, regardless of whether it's a 100-story skyscraper or vacant dirt lot, requires this baseline.
What's in it?
That includes exhaustive borrower and entity information, the precise legal property address, the fully executed purchase contract if it's an acquisition, a highly detailed exit strategy for how the bank will actually get paid back, the specific loan purpose, and the entity organizational documents like the LLC operating agreements.
Just to prove who can actually sign for the loan.
Legally prove who actually has the authority to sign the dotted line and bind the company to millions of dollars of debt. Exactly.
All right.
But here is the critical trap borrowers fall into. That universal core is just the starting line.
It's the bare minimum.
It is never, ever the finish line.
And looking at the notes here regarding the Crestwell IQ Asset-Specific Document Requirements Guide, this is where it gets incredibly intense. The moment you step outside that universal core, the document requirements explode into these hyper-specific, wildly specialized requests that are dictated entirely by the asset class.
It's completely tailored.
The variety of anxieties here is staggering.
It has to be staggering because the operational risks of different types of real estate are fundamentally alien to one another.
Give me some examples. Let's do a deep dive into this, maybe starting with multifamily and residential income properties.
Okay, multifamily. A standard 100-unit apartment building obviously needs unit mixes and T12s. We know that. But the underwriter's specific anxiety revolves around operational leakage. So they need to deeply understand the utility billing structures.
Operational leakage, okay.
Is the building utilizing a RUBS system, a ratio utility billing system?
Stop there for a second. Explain RUBS for the listener who might not be familiar with the mechanics of it. Why does a bank care how the water bill is paid?
Because it drastically alters the net operating income. If an older apartment building is master metered, meaning there's only one giant water meter for the whole building, the landlord pays the massive water bill out of pocket.
Which eats into profits.
Big time. Now, the RUBS system is a mathematical formula where the landlord passes that water cost back to the tenants, usually based on square footage or the number of occupants in each unit.
Oh, smart.
It is. But the underwriter needs to see the exact history of that utility recovery. Are you actually collecting that money back from the tenants? Or are you absorbing a massive spike in utility costs that will destroy your cash flow? They also need to know if the units are sub-metered or if utilities are just baked into a flat rent.
That makes perfect sense. The anxiety is about who holds the bag when the electric bill spikes in July.
Exactly.
Now, what if you pivot just slightly within the residential space to, say, student housing? It's still residential, so is it the exact same checklist?
The checklist completely mutates. Student housing requires the lender to underwrite a highly unique seasonal risk profile.
Because students leave for the summer.
Right. First, they need to know if the leases are structured by the bed or by the unit.
Why does that matter?
Think about it. If you lease a 4-bedroom apartment by the unit to 4 students, and one of them drops out of school and moves home, the remaining 3 students are still legally on the hook for the entire rent.
The landlord still gets paid.
Yes. But if you lease it by the bed and one student leaves, the landlord just lost 25% of the revenue for that unit. And you can't exactly move a total stranger in with 3 college sophomores mid-semester.
Wow, that is a huge risk difference.
Huge. The underwriter also needs to see the exact geographic proximity to campus, and crucially, they need to see the pre-leasing velocity.
You're leasing.
They don't just care who's in the building today in April. They are terrified about whether the building is sufficiently pre-leased for the upcoming fall semester in September. If you miss that narrow August leasing window in student housing, that asset sits empty for an entire year.
Wow. Okay, let's look at another residential niche. Manufactured housing or mobile home parks? What keeps an underwriter up at night there?
For a mobile home park, the ultimate anxiety is about infrastructure decay and ownership liability. The lender demands to know the exact ratio of lot leases versus park-owned homes.
Lot leases where the tenant owns the actual physical trailer and they just pay the landlord rent for the patch of dirt it sits on. Right.
Exactly. And lenders love lot leases because the tenant is responsible for fixing their own leaky roof.
Low maintenance.
Very low. But a park-owned home means the sponsor owns the trailer, which means massive maintenance headaches. But the even bigger anxiety is the subterranean infrastructure.
What's underground?
Yes. The lender needs comprehensive engineering reports on the age of the underground water pipes, the sewer systems, and the electrical grids. Because if a main sewer line collapses beneath a mobile home park, the environmental cleanup and replacement costs can easily run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, instantly wiping out a year or more of operating profit.
This is fascinating. Let's completely switch gears and jump over to hospitality. Hotels. Because the real estate is really just the shell here. It's an operating business, isn't it? What is the underwriter terrified of?
You nailed it. Hotels are complex, highly labor-intensive operating businesses that just happen to be wrapped in a real estate shell. The core anxiety here is extreme, unmitigated, daily volatility.
Daily volatility.
A multifamily lease guarantees income for 12 months. A hotel lease lasts for 1 night.
That's a scary thought.
It is. So the lender requires trailing 3-year STR reports, that's Smith Travel Research, which meticulously benchmarks your hotel's daily performance against a highly specific, local competitive set of other hotels. They need to see your RevPAR, history, revenue per available room broken down month by month for at least 24 to 36 months to identify seasonal cash flow dips.
And what if it's a branded hotel? Say the borrower is buying a franchise Marriott or a Hilton.
Then the complexity skyrockets because now you have to provide the PIP, the Property Improvement Plan.
The PIP, what is that?
When a branded hotel changes hands, The corporate franchisor almost always mandates a massive non-negotiable renovation to bring the aging property up to their current modern brand standard.
Oh, like demanding new beds or TVs.
Bigger than that, they might demand new carpets, upgraded lobby furniture, completely remodeled bathrooms, or even major structural changes. That PIP can easily cost $3 or $4 million.
Wow.
And if that PIP is not exhaustively documented, fully costed out, and explicitly budgeted into the borrower's loan request, the deal is dead on arrival. The bank will not fund a loan if the franchisor is going to pull the brand flag off the building 6 months later because the sponsor couldn't afford the new lobby.
It's incredible how specific this gets. Let's keep moving through the asset classes. What about office and retail space? We hear so much about the death of the office and the retail apocalypse. How do you underwrite that fear?
With office and retail, the intrinsic value of the brick and mortar is almost secondary at this point. The value is entirely dictated by the legal strength of the leases.
It's all about the paper.
It's all about the paper. So the underwriter demands incredibly detailed lease abstracts. They need to see the remaining term, the exact schedule of rent escalations, the tenant's renewal options, and explicitly who is responsible for the tenant improvements, the cost of building up the space.
And for retail specifically?
For retail, they need the historical CAM reconciliation, the common area maintenance. They need to see mathematically how much of the parking lot paving, the snow removal, and the exterior lighting is actually being passed through and reimbursed by the tenants. And crucially, they require deep corporate credit profiles on any major anchor tenants.
Because if a massive regional grocery chain occupies 40% of your retail plaza and they go bankrupt, your plaza basically goes bankrupt.
Exactly. The lender is underwriting that grocery chain's corporate health just as rigorously as they are underwriting your sponsor. They also scour the leases for co-tenancy clauses.
Co-tenancy clauses, what are those?
A co-tenancy clause might state that if the anchor grocery store leaves, the smaller inline shops like the nail salon or the dry cleaner have the legal right to instantly cut their rent in half or break their lease entirely.
Oh, wow. So one closure triggers a domino effect.
Yes, that is a cascading catastrophic risk that the bank absolutely must identify.
Okay, let's hit one more major category: industrial and warehouse space. With the rise of e-commerce, these are hot assets right now. But what are the specific anxieties?
Industrial real estate is fundamentally about logistics efficiency and environmental liability. So the specific documents they need revolve around physical engineering specifications.
Like what?
What is the clear height of the ceilings? Because modern logistics companies need 32 to 36-foot clear heights to stack pallets efficiently. What is the column spacing? Can modern forklifts actually maneuver in there? How many dock-high doors and trailer parking spots are there? What is the electrical amperage capacity of the building?
That is highly technical.
Very. But the most heavily scrutinized documents in industrial are the environmental reports. You absolutely must have a pristine Phase I environmental site assessment. And if the site has any history of heavy industrial use like manufacturing or chemical storage, you will likely need Phase II, which involves physically drilling soil samples.
Because of circular regulations, right? The bank doesn't want to accidentally take ownership of a toxic waste dump.
Exactly. If the borrower defaults and the bank has to foreclose on the property, the bank suddenly becomes in the chain of title for brownfield site. And they could be on the hook for millions of dollars in EPA-mandated environmental cleanup. The underwriter is terrified of funding a property that turns out to be an environmental disaster.
The sheer breadth of these specific requirements is staggering. I mean, it becomes so obvious why trying to use a standard generic checklist for every deal is just a recipe for instant rejection. Just imagine a borrower submitting a retail strip mall checklist to a bank for a marina acquisition.
They'd be laughed out of the room.
Right. A marina doesn't need CAM reconciliations. A marina needs historical dredging reports, water depth charts, Army Corps of Engineers permits, and environmental fuel dock licensing. Or imagine applying for a loan on a memory care facility with an apartment checklist. You can't just send a basic rent roll. The bank needs to see state survey and health inspection histories, specific nurse-to-patient staffing ratios, and a detailed breakdown of the Medicare versus Medicaid payer mixes. If you send a generic, disorganized package, you are basically screaming at the top of your lungs to the lender that you are an amateur who does not understand the business you are buying.
Which is exactly why the intake process for a loan application must be aggressively customized for the exact asset class before it ever goes to the bank.
And this is precisely why you, the listener, need M.E. Crestwell Capital. Their initial intake process is meticulously customized for the exact asset class you are acquiring, developing, or refinancing.
They don't do generic.
No, they don't. They already know the exact niche underwriting anxieties associated with your specific property type, whether it's a cold storage facility, a branded hotel, or a 300-unit apartment complex. They gather the exact evidence needed to soothe those specific anxieties up front. Call Emmy Crestwell Capital for a consultation so you aren't embarrassing yourself by submitting an industrial warehouse checklist for a highly regulated assisted living facility.
It saves everyone so much time.
It really does. So let's play this out. Let's say a borrower has actually done all of this incredibly hard work. You've gathered all the hyper-specific, highly detailed documents, you've anticipated and answered all the physical underwriting questions, you've done the environmental studies, and you take all this data and you package it into a beautiful, glossy, institutional-looking PDF report.
A masterpiece.
Right. It has a gorgeous cover page, high-resolution drone photography, perfect typographical formatting. You submit this masterpiece to the bank. You are definitely getting funded now, right?
Oh, I know the answer to this one.
The answer is absolutely not. Because in today's capital markets, that visual polish, that beautiful formatting, it means basically nothing.
Precisely. We have crossed a threshold in the industry. We have entered the age where the traditional, beautifully formatted real estate report is entirely obsolete as a signal of fundamental trust.
This is a huge paradigm shift. Let's unpack this.
Ah.
Because for decades, a beautiful report was the proof, right? If you handed a banker a 50-page, beautifully bound book, they inherently trusted it more than a stack of loose papers.
Yes, and there was a very logical reason for that. Historically, if an offering memorandum or a loan package looked highly professional, clean, and perfectly formatted, it proved something very real in the physical world.
It proved effort.
It proved that a human being, or more likely, an entire firm of highly paid analysts, had invested dozens, if not hundreds of hours doing rigorous, tedious work. It meant they had manually verified the county ownership records, they had meticulously pulled and adjusted comparable sales, they had built the financial models from scratch, and they had sweat over the formatting to present it perfectly.
The medium was the message.
Exactly. The intense physical effort required to create the polished report was, in itself, the credibility signal. A sloppy, typo-ridden report meant a sloppy, rushed process. A polished report meant a rigorous, disciplined process.
But then generative AI entered the chat and completely blew up that correlation.
Totally destroyed it. Today, the barrier to creating visual perfection is basically zero. Anyone with a basic internet connection and a $20 subscription to an AI tool can produce a flawless, fluent, incredibly confident-sounding executive summary in about 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's wild how fast it is.
They can generate beautiful, complex-looking charts and perfect formatting without ever verifying a single underlying number. The AI will happily hallucinate a compelling narrative about a neighborhood's economic growth without checking a single actual census data point.
Because it just predicts text, it doesn't know facts.
Right, so the visual signal of trust is completely irreparably broken. Polish is no longer evidence of rigor. Polish is just a default setting on software.
So if the formatting doesn't prove anything anymore, how does a seasoned underwriter actually know if the deal they're looking at is grounded in reality? Or if it's just an AI hallucination dressed up in a nice font?
This is where the industry is moving, and where we introduce the new standard of trust. We call it the reasoning trail.
The reasoning trail, okay.
In the modern era, the only thing that differentiates a rigorous, trustworthy analysis from a well-formatted, automated guess is whether the underlying reasoning behind the conclusion can be audited by the reader.
So it's about transparency.
Total transparency. A real, trustworthy report must explicitly show 4 specific things.
Lay out this reasoning trail for us. What are the 4 pillars of a trustworthy report?
First, it must explicitly show exactly which signals were verified and how they were verified. It is no longer enough to just state the anchor tenant's lease expires in 2030.
Right, AI can write that sentence.
Exactly. The report must show what specifically confirmed that fact against what source document. It should read, lease expiration confirmed via review of the executed lease amendment dated March 4th, cross-referenced with the tenant estoppel certificate.
It's literally showing your work in math class.
That's exactly what it is. Show the steps. Second, it must show what analytical framework was applied. A raw fact is not a conclusion.
Okay, give me an example.
If the fact is that comparable property sold for $150 a square foot, how did you get from that fact to your interpretation that this specific property is worth $160? What adjustments were made for age, location, or condition? You can't just leap to a number.
And the third pillar.
Third, what alternative conclusions were considered and why were they ultimately rejected?
Oh, that's interesting.
A report that only shows one single, hyper-optimistic path to profitability, with absolutely no acknowledgement that other options or risks even exist, is not an analysis. It is pure confirmation bias. If you are projecting a massive rent increase, did you consider a scenario where rents stay flat? And if so, why did you mathematically reject the flat rent scenario?
You have to prove why the bad outcome isn't likely. And the fourth thing on the reasoning trail.
The fourth thing is perhaps the most counterintuitive, but honestly the most crucial. A trustworthy report must explicitly state where meaningful uncertainty still remains.
Wow, so you're saying that actively admitting what you don't know to the bank is actually a signal of strength and credibility.
Absolutely it is. Every single real estate analysis on Earth has limits. Nobody has a crystal ball. A report that expresses total 100% confidence in every single projection is usually a massive flashing red flag to a chief credit officer.
Why? Because it looks fake.
Because it means the sponsor is either deliberately hiding a structural weakness, or they were simply too lazy or inexperienced to dig deep enough to find the real risks. Total confidence is the hallmark of a lazy analysis.
That is so true.
Identifying the uncertainty, saying, hey, we are highly confident in the current in-place income, but there is meaningful uncertainty around the cost of the roof replacement due to fluctuating steel prices, that shows the lender that you actually understand the mechanics of risk.
I absolutely love this framework. And for you, the listener, I want to introduce a highly practical tool from the sources today called the 30-second test. If you are looking at a real estate report, even when you paid a broker a lot of money to produce for you, ask yourself this one simple question. If I disagree with this report's conclusion, can I identify exactly which specific assumption I disagree with?
That is the ultimate litmus test for a modern offering memorandum. Can you see the foundational valuation basis? Can you clearly see the exact comparable set of properties that was chosen, and more importantly, the ones that were deliberately excluded? Can you see the confidence level attached to the renovation timeline?
Right. If you try to apply the 30-second test and the answer is no, because the actual reasoning is completely invisible, the math is hidden behind a summary chart, and all you have is a pretty confident conclusion, then that report is functionally useless to an institutional lender.
It's just a pretty picture.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how pretty the PDF is or how much you paid for it. Treat that conclusion with extreme caution because a bank will tear it apart.
Because when the reasoning is invisible, you aren't making an informed capital decision. You are just blindly trusting a template. And banks do not lend millions of dollars based on templates.
And this brings us right back to why the Opportunity Memorandum produced by M.E. Cresswell Capital is so vital in today's market. Their documentation is built from the ground up to survive this exact brutal scrutiny.
They understand the reasoning trail.
They do. They do not just decorate weak deals with pretty fonts and drone photos. They build a fully auditable reasoning trail. Every claim is backed by a verified source. If you want a report that actually proves its math, survives the 30-second test, and commands immediate respect from institutional lenders, you need to stop sending pretty PDFs and call M.E. Cresswell Capital for a consultation.
If we really want to synthesize this and connect it to the bigger picture of how deals get funded, it helps to see what actually happens when a deal lacks this auditable intelligence, and exactly how the Cresswell IQ method steps in to fix it in real time.
Ooh, I'd love to hear a real-world example.
Let's look at the anatomy of a misfire.
Yes, let's get into the weeds with a case study. Put us directly in the shoes of the underwriter at the bank.
Okay, here is the exact scenario. A borrower comes to you. They are buying a 64-unit Class B apartment building in a solid suburban market. The purchase price is $6.4 million, and they are requesting a standard $5.2 million loan to finance the acquisition.
Seems pretty standard.
On the surface, the initial pre-screen looks incredibly solid. The property is officially reported as 94% occupied. The rent roll, which was provided by the seller and forwarded by the borrower, says the property is currently pulling in $72,000 a month in gross rent.
Okay, let's do the quick napkin math on that. So $72,000 a month times 12 months, that suggests an annualized gross income of $864,000. Against a $6.4 million purchase price, that sounds like a very healthy, very fundable property.
It absolutely does. But then, as the underwriter, you turn the page of the package and you look at the T12, the actual trailing 12-month operating statement generated by the property management software. And the T12 shows that over the last 365 days, the property only actually collected and deposited $720,000 into the bank account.
Whoa, stop right there. That is a massive glaring gap. The rent roll implies they should be making $864,000 a year, but the actual bank account only saw $720,000. That's a difference of nearly $150,000. What is causing that gap?
Exactly. Why the gap? That is the underwriting anxiety screaming at you from the page. Were massive concessions given to tenants to get them to sign the lease. So the scheduled rent is artificially high, but the actual cash paid is low.
Right.
Are collections incredibly weak because the property manager is lazy and nobody is enforcing late fees? Were several units completely offline for maintenance for 6 months? Or, in the most cynical scenario, is the seller just artificially inflating the current rent roll right before the sale by moving in totally unqualified tenants just to make the building look full?
And if a borrower submits that file without proactively explaining that $150,000 gap?
The deal dies. Ignoring that gap, or worse, not even noticing it before you submit the file, kills the transaction instantly.
Because the bank assumes the worst.
In the absence of an explanation, the lender always assumes the worst-case scenario. They assume either the seller is committing fraud or the borrower is so incompetent they don't even know their own numbers. But let's continue with this case study because it actually gets worse. The borrower also includes a value-add renovation budget. They're asking the bank to fund an additional $300,000 to upgrade 12 of the units.
Okay, $300,000 divided by 12 units, that's exactly $25,000 per unit. That seems like a reasonable budget for, cosmetic interior updates, new flooring, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, some fresh paint.
It might be perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
But the borrower's pro forma is projecting that immediately after these $25,000 upgrades, they can aggressively raise the rent on those specific units by $450 a month.
And the underwriter immediately asks, according to what?
Precisely. What is the auditable evidence for this massive $450 bump? Are there nearby renovated comparable properties proving that this specific submarket will actually support that premium rent? Have they already executed any test leases in the building at that new rate to prove the concept?
You have to prove it's possible.
And furthermore, what about the rest of the building's infrastructure? That $300,000 budget is strictly dedicated to unit interiors to drive revenue. But what about the roof? What about the 20-year-old aging mechanical systems? What about the crumbling parking lot?
Yeah, those are big-ticket items.
If the central HVAC system fails in year 2, it will wipe out all the profit, and that $450 rent bump means absolutely nothing because the tenants will just move out.
So the underwriter sees the unverified rent gap, they see the unsupported rent bump, they see the deferred maintenance risk, the deal stalls out, the lender goes quiet, the broker throws up their hands and says the bank is just being unreasonable. What should the borrower do at this exact moment? Just package it up and blast it out to 5 more lenders, hoping one of them is less observant?
No. That is the absolute worst thing you can do, and it's what ruins portfolios. Do not just pass a fundamentally flawed file to another broker or another bank. You have to stop the process and systematically reconstruct the history of the misfire.
Do a post-mortem?
Yes. You need to pull the written record. Who issued the initial terms? What specific conditions or numbers were disputed by the credit committee? What changed between the initial submission and the eventual silence? You have to identify exactly where the bank's confidence broke before you ever present that asset to the capital markets again.
And this meticulous reconstruction is exactly where the Crestwell method comes in. Let's walk the listener through this incredibly disciplined path of opportunity intelligence. How does M.E. Crestwell Capital actually process a messy, complicated deal like this 64-unit apartment to make sure it doesn't fail on the file?
The opportunity intelligence methodology is built on a rigid, uncompromising sequence that evaluates 5 distinct layers of intelligence. It is not just about glancing at a spreadsheet. It's a full forensic teardown.
Let's hit those 5 layers. This is the core of the whole process.
So layer 1 is market intelligence. This isn't just pulling a generic demographic report.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. This is verifying the granular ownership history of the asset, analyzing the existing financing structure the seller has in place, and deeply understanding the micro-market context. Layer 2 is relationship intelligence.
Which means what exactly?
This goes beyond the numbers to understand the actual human objectives. What is the sponsor's true timeline? Are they in a 1031 exchange and desperate to close? And crucially, identifying who the real decision makers are on all sides of the transaction.
Okay, layer 3.
Layer 3 is document intelligence. This is the heavy lifting. This is the forensic verification of the source documents. This is where you refuse to accept the borrower's optimistic narratives as fact.
Right, so this is where the Crestwell analyst spots that $150,000 gap between the rent roll and the T12 before the bank ever even sees it, and they force the borrower to explain it.
Exactly. You cure the disease before you go to the doctor. Yeah. Layer 4 is comparable intelligence. This is not just finding 3 buildings nearby that sold recently. This is building highly adjusted comps for current value, stabilized income, and after-repair scenarios, specifically tailored for the exact loan purpose.
So apples to apples.
Exactly. If you are doing a heavy value add, your comps need to be other heavy value add projects, not brand new construction. And finally, layer 5 is advisory intelligence. This is where professional, seasoned human judgment is applied to the data and where an explicit confidence level is attached to every single finding in the report.
And this intelligence all flows through a very specific operational sequence at Crestwell, right? It's not haphazard at all. It starts with data intake, moves to automated triage to flag missing items, then a deep analyst review, exhaustive document verification, rigorous comparable analysis, the actual creation of the opportunity memorandum, and finally, only when the file is bulletproof, the capital partner match.
What's fascinating here, and what truly separates this process from the rest of the industry, is the extreme discipline regarding how artificial intelligence is utilized in this sequence. Earlier, we talked about how AI completely ruined the credibility of the PDF report by hallucinating beautiful summaries.
Right, it made polish cheap.
But Crestwell uses AI correctly as a tool for scale, not as a replacement for human judgment. In the Crestwell IQ system, AI is used to read, parse, and explain the massive volumes of data, but it never, ever approves a deal.
I want to highlight that distinction because it's brilliant. AI explains the data, but it never approves the risk.
Exactly. Every single handoff in that sequence, from triage to the final memorandum, is human approved. The deterministic math and the manually verified source documents drive the final figures, not a generative AI model's best guess.
So it's grounded in reality.
100%. Source data is never overwritten. Assumptions are never silently replaced just to make the math look better. Everything is time-stamped, fully auditable, and meticulously logged in the reasoning trail.
So to be clear for the listener, ME Crestwell Capital isn't sitting here guaranteeing that every single deal you bring them will get funded. They aren't magicians who can turn a terrible property into a great one.
No, they are not magicians, and anyone who guarantees funding on a complex commercial deal before an underwriter has even spoken is outright lying to you.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag.
What Crestwell IQ does is create a bulletproof structure around the reasoning. It forces everyone involved, the borrower, the broker, the seller, and eventually the lender, to deal with the exact same set of verified, auditable facts. It prevents your potentially great deal from spending its precious credibility on easily curable administrative mistakes.
It stops you from shooting yourself in the foot before the race even begins. This rigorous, 5-layer human-in-the-loop process is exactly why ME Crestwell Capital is the premier choice for serious commercial real estate borrowers who actually want certainty of execution. If you have a deal sitting on your desk right now, and especially if you have a deal that previously stalled out and you still don't know why, you need to demand a better process for your portfolio, reach out to them for a consultation. Stop leaving your capital path to chance and don't let your next multi-million-dollar deal fail on the file.
So when we synthesize everything we've discussed today, what does this all mean for the listener actively trying to navigate these markets?
Right.
The core takeaway is that capital decisions in commercial real estate are not based on one impressive fact.
Right.
You do not get a $10 million loan just because the property happens to be in a fantastic zip code or just because your sponsor has a high net worth on paper. Capital decisions are based entirely, 100%, on structural alignment.
The physical property has to objectively support the requested valuation. The in-place and projected income has to mathematically support the debt service coverage ratio. The borrower has to have the verified experience and liquidity to actually execute the business plan. And the documents, the file itself, have to mathematically and legally prove every single claim being made in the narrative.
A deal can be completely genuine. The market opportunity can be very real. But if it is totally unprepared and disorganized, it will fail just as quickly as a fraudulent one. And remember the golden rule. Pretty packaging cannot manufacture a good deal. You can't put lipstick on a pig, format it nicely, and expect a smart institutional underwriter to buy it.
They see right through it.
But proper, rigorous forensic preparation, what we call opportunity intelligence, reveals early on whether a weakness in your deal is curable or fatal.
And that is the ultimate value, isn't it? If the weakness is curable, like a missing document or an unexplained rent gap, you fix it in the dark before the lender ever sees it. If the weakness is truly fatal, like the property simply doesn't generate enough cash to pay the mortgage at current rates, you uncover it early, you save yourself months of brain damage, legal fees, and reputational risk, and you move on to the next deal. Better capital decisions truly do begin with better reasoning.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
We want to remind you one last time that this deep dive was brought to you by Emmy Crestwell Capital and produced by Maxine Ebegbuzie. If you want to stop guessing why lenders are going silent on you and you want to start actually funding your portfolio, gather your files, reach out, and call them for a consultation today.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with one final, slightly uncomfortable thought to mull over.
Lay it on us.
We established very clearly earlier that when a lender suddenly goes silent on you, that silence is actually loud, clear information. It is feedback about the messy, disorganized, and risky state of your file.
Right, silence is a rejection dressed as a delay.
So consider this dynamic from the other side of the table. If a lender's silence speaks volumes about the state of your file,
Oh.
what does your silence about the uncurable weaknesses in your own deal say about your credibility as a sponsor?
Oh, wow.
When you try to hide a fundamental flaw, when you sweep a bad comparable sale or trailing collection issue under the rug, and you just sit there silently hoping the underwriter is too overworked to notice,
in the end, you are not protecting the deal. No one wants to audition for rejection, right? That's a given. So make sure that you're aggressively transparent and then build a reasoning trail. And then the next step would be that you need to own your narrative. What narrative? The narrative of your assets' risks. Own that narrative. Lay it out. Get in front of it. Because if not, those risks have the potential to own you when it really counts in the end. Thank you so much for spending time with us. If today's conversation changed the way you think about even one part of commercial real estate transactions, then we've accomplished exactly what this journal was created to do. Because we have to remember that every property, it has a story, right? And the borrower always has an objective. And finally, every financing request, what it does is it essentially asks a lender to place confidence in a set of facts. And so the quality of that decision will always depend on the quality of the decisions asked before the file is submitted. That's what opportunity intelligence is all about. That headline that just stands out. We're looking beyond that. And then following the evidence. Okay, that's super important. And then understanding the relationships between the numbers, the documents, the people, and the strategy. So decisions are made with absolute clarity instead of a set of assumptions. After hearing all of this, if you feel like, hey, I have a transaction and I kind of want a deeper review, or you have questions that you'd like us to explore maybe in a future episode, I'd love to hear from you. And also, you can learn more about Crestwell IQ, how to access additional research, or connect with me directly at emmycrestwellcapital.com. That's mecrestwellcapital.com. And if you found value in today's conversation that we've gone through, consider sharing this episode with a broker or an investor, lender, attorney, or even a property owner who appreciates thoughtful analyses. Okay, now every new perspective, we believe, strengthens this community. So until next time, keep asking better questions because every opportunity leaves clues. The better you learn to read them, the better your decisions become. I'm Maxine Ebegbuzie. Thank you for joining me for the Opportunity Intelligence Journal.